years I quoted that verse without understanding why in the world Paul included the resurrection in this verse about salvation. It isn't enough that Jesus loved us. It isn't enough that he died for me on a cross. Can't I just confess Jesus is Lord and bam, I'm saved? Why in the world would Paul put in there something about the resurrection? Because it is the supernatural, mind-blowing resurrection of Jesus that proves that the message and ministry of Jesus are true. If God can resurrect something that is dead, he has the power to save you and to save me. And if I deny the resurrection, I'm going to start denying that he can even save me in the process. I'm going to deny everything. Because if the resurrection didn't happen, then Jesus is a liar because he predicted his death and resurrection several times if you go in the Gospels. And so if he's a liar, then probably his disciples weren't very true as well. All the guys that wrote the New Testament, what about all the predictions about Jesus from the Old Testament? That stuff must be lies too. So everything begins to fall when you and I don't trust in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. July 20th is the 50th anniversary of the first men to walk on the moon. Commander Neil Armstrong, pilot Buzz Aldrin landed the Apollo lunar module Eagle on July 20th, 1969. You may even remember the first words of Armstrong. You heard it in the video. As he took his first step, he said what words? One small step, a giant leap for mankind. Apollo 11 mission took more than 8 days to travel. It cost $25.4 billion and took an estimated 400,000 scientists, technicians, and engineers to complete. Yet a recent opinion poll in the United States says that between 6 to 20% of Americans believe that the moon landings were fake. Steph Curry, one of NBA's greatest stars, said this year, shocked people by saying that he kind of didn't believe that the lunar landings were real. And the reaction to that from people who were actually still alive that were a part of that was unbelievable. Now, the interesting thing to me is that most of us live every day enjoying the benefits of space exploration. Did you know that? That so many there are hundreds and hundreds of modern inventions that you and I use every single day that are a result of space exploration like the Apollo 11. Here are a few of the hundreds of inventions created as a result of space travel or made popular through space travel. LASIK eye surgery. Anybody has enjoyed that in this room? You can thank the Apollo 11 guys. Artificial limbs. Anybody ever been on an airplane before? The anti-icing systems that they use for planes, that was first created for space travel. Radial tire technology. No one in this room uses tires at all. Advanced video technology. Velcro. Anybody got Velcro on anything that you use on a regular basis? That was made possible. It wasn't exactly invented by them, but it was made useful through space technology. The microchip. That's a small thing, right? No one uses a microchip. That is the father of the computer. So everything, how many things do you use on a regular basis that have computers in them? Anybody got a car? Microwave. Anybody got a cell phone in this room? All thanks to the microchip. GPS. No one uses that. Nobody cooks with anything that has Teflon in it. Cordless power. What would we do without cordless power tools? Guess where that was invented? Space exploration as well. All these things through the technology of people trying to get to the moon. Now, my point of talking about all this stuff is for all the people who claim not to believe in the moon landing, I would encourage them not to use or enjoy the benefits of space travel. I don't hear Steph Curry going, hey man, I am so bought into the fact that I don't believe the lunar landing, that I'm not going to use a cell phone, I'm not going to use a computer, I'm not going to use radial tires, I'm not going to use any benefits because I don't believe it ever existed. I don't think they're going there. I would just encourage you, if you really don't believe it, then don't enjoy the practical benefits of all the things that space exploration helped us enjoy today. Now, for some, believing in the resurrection of Jesus Christ is as ridiculous as believing that man walked on the moon. A poll came out 2 years ago from the BBC, actually on Palm Sunday, on this day, and it said that 23% of those who claim to be Christians did not believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead at all. 23% of people who believe in Jesus, who believe in God, who believe in the Bible, but they don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Now, whether or not that poll from England is true for everybody in all circumstances, I do believe that there's a lot of confusion in the world around us about the reality of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Let me tell you my position very clearly today. I believe in a literal, historical, and factual resurrection of Jesus Christ. I believe that Jesus lived, he died, was resurrected, and one day will come again. I am not here, however, to argue the historical fact of the resurrection today. To be honest, if you don't believe in the moon landing, which happened 50 years ago, I'm probably not going to be able to convince you of something that happened almost 2,000 years ago. So I'm not going to talk about the science of the resurrection today. What I'm here to do today, are you ready? I want to describe the personal and spiritual benefits of the resurrection. Why you should believe in the resurrection, how that impacts our life, our faith, and even our character by trusting in the resurrection, and like the benefits that we enjoy from space exploration. I want to share these 3 benefits that we can enjoy, and maybe through understanding these benefits, you might embrace the importance of the resurrection to your faith and to your life. Now, through 1 Corinthians 15, we can discover the following. We're going to be looking at these the next 3 weeks. Are you ready? Here we go. Because of the resurrection, number 1, I can be trustworthy. Also, because of the resurrection, I can be forgiven and really know that. And from 1 Corinthians 15, also, because of the resurrection, I can experience new life. And so for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at those 3 incredible benefits of the resurrection. So today, we're looking at, because of the resurrection, I can be trustworthy. Now, we find Paul's first argument concerning the benefits of the resurrection in verse 14. He says the following, "And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain, and your faith is in vain." Paul uses those words "in vain" 4 times in this chapter. If you don't use that word on a regular basis, in vain, it basically means without meaning. It means to be empty. We get the image of a pitcher that has been created to hold something but remains empty on a shelf. Now, it has beauty and has value on its own, but these values are only really find meaning when it is filled with something. Paul says that without the resurrection, there are 2 things that are empty or that are in vain: our preaching and our faith. And I want to touch on both of those. First, Paul says, he mentions our preaching. Now, guess what? Paul is not talking about my weekly sermon. He's not really talking about preaching at all, to be honest with you. We think of preaching as something that preachers do, but Paul is not talking about that here. He is talking about the gospel, the message, mission, and power of God to save us. Listen to verse 1 and 2 because it's connected with verse 14. He says, "Now I would remind you, brothers, of the gospel I preached to you." See how he connects those 2? "Which you received, in which you stand, and by which you are being saved, if you hold fast to the word I preached to you, unless you believed in vain." Paul goes on in verses 3 through 11 to describe how the resurrection was not only according to Scripture, but proved that everything that Jesus said and did was true. It's not empty. I don't know if you realize this today. Everybody look in my direction for just a second. I want to see everybody's eyes today. Did you know that everybody in this room, everyone in this room has a theology? Whether you are a Christian or not, you might say, "I'm an atheist," or "I'm an agnostic." You've never, maybe most of you in this room have never gone to seminary or written a book, but every single person in this room has a theology. Theology is nothing more than my understanding of the nature of God and how I relate to him. And everybody in this room has a theology, and from your theology filters down values that you and I put into practice every single day. How you relate to God and how you think God relates to you impacts how you think about so many different things. Values about life, relationships, money, beauty, sex, respect towards others, success, love, happiness, and so much more. And it all begins with your theology, and it filters down through your values that you put into practice every single day. What if at the end of your days, at the end of your existence on earth, you realize that everything you based your life on was empty? All the time, money, sweat, tears, hard work, and emotion, all in vain, all empty. Paul says that without the resurrection, the gospel is in vain and our faith is empty as well. Verse 15 explains this in greater detail. He says, if we are even found to be misrepresenting God. It's another word for a hypocrite. Misrepresenting God because we testified about God that he raised Christ, whom he did not raise if it's true that the dead are not raised. Now, there was a great cultural and spiritual diversity in the people in the church at Corinth. And because of this, there was a debate in the church whether or not the dead would be raised at the second coming of Christ. And Paul basically says that if God doesn't have the power to raise us in the future, then we might as well deny the resurrection of Jesus as well. That's why verse 16 says, for if the dead are not raised, not even Christ has been raised. So Paul concludes that without the resurrection, our faith has holes in it, and we are nothing but empty hypocrites who misrepresent God. I talked to our students last night about the danger of customizing our gospel. The danger for our younger generation especially is to take the truth of the gospel and say, yeah, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but let me customize it to say what I want it to say. And so many people, we found 23% of people, at least in England, that said, hey, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in the resurrection. I can't go that far. And what I'm telling you today is if you don't trust in the resurrection, then so many other things around you begin to fall. When we customize our faith, what happens to it is, I only believe in the things that I think are okay, but little by little, doubt seeps into everything. For example, for years, I used the passage called the Roman Road to share my faith with others. Many of you know those passages in Romans. Now, one of those passages is Romans chapter 10, verse 9. It says the following, because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, it says you will be saved. Two important requirements. This is if you confess with your mouth that he's Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, it says you will be saved. For years I quoted that verse without understanding why in the world Paul included the resurrection in this verse about salvation. It isn't enough that Jesus loved us. It isn't enough that he died for me on a cross. Can't I just confess Jesus is Lord and bam, I'm saved? Why in the world would Paul put in there something about the resurrection? Because it is the supernatural, mind-blowing resurrection of Jesus that proves that the message and ministry of Jesus are true. If God can resurrect something that is dead, he has the power to save you and to save me. And if I deny the resurrection, I'm going to start denying that he can even save me in the process. I'm going to deny everything. Because if the resurrection didn't happen, then Jesus is a liar because he predicted his death and resurrection several times if you go in the Gospels. And so if he's a liar, then probably his disciples weren't very true as well. All the guys that wrote the New Testament, what about all the predictions about Jesus from the Old Testament? That stuff must be lies too. So everything begins to fall when you and I don't trust in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's so important, you guys. It's not about customizing our faith. It's about putting trust in the supernatural power of God, not only to save me, to believe that his word and his power can transform my life as well. Paul goes on to write in verses 10 and 11 in Romans 10, it says, for with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. For the scriptures say, Everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. Everyone who believes will not be empty. We will not live our lives in vain. Guys, because of the resurrection, I can trust in the gospel, the message, mission, and power of God to save us. Not only does the resurrection prove that God is trustworthy, but something supernatural happens as well. When I trust in him, I become trustworthy too. Most of you in this room would love for someone to say about you or to say about me that you're a trustworthy person, that someone can confide in you, that you're somebody with integrity. Most everyone in this room would love to be that kind of person. And it begins, according to the scriptures, with trusting that God is trustworthy. When I trust in him, I become trustworthy as well. Not perfect, not error-free, but I become trustworthy. My life has meaning. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5:21 that we become his righteousness. Because of the resurrection of Jesus, you and I can be trustworthy. Because of the empty tomb, my life is not empty. This is one of the amazing benefits of the resurrection when you and I choose to believe.